You made it through the editing process. You recorded your podcast, you prepared it, and now it's ready to export and go on to the next step, which is sharing it with the world. Now that you've done your EQ, you've done your compression, you've done your editing, you've added the loudness normalization, and then you've done the limiter. The last thing that we need to do is export your audio. And this step is just as easy as it was to import your audio. So once you have your audio highlighted, once again, and this is the zoomed out state, just so we can see everything, you're going to come to File, and you're going to go to Export. And what you want to do is, for podcasts typically, when you're uploading it, and we're going to be uploading to Anchor, which is a great place to distribute and share your podcast, you want your file to be in an MP3 format. It's a compressed format, and it's small, and it is now becoming the standard in how to share your audio through various podcasting apps. So we're going to go to File, Export, Export as MP3. Okay, once we click that, I'm just going to export it to my desktop for the sake of this example. But you want to make sure you name your podcast, whatever you want to name it. It can be My First Podcast or name of whatever your podcast show is, and you put your episode down or whatever, however you want to name it. So mine is going to be the Dude Make Something Podcast. I think this is actually episode 16 or 17, something like that. I'll change it later if it's wrong. And I like to put Pod Fin at the end of mine, just so I know this is the finished version. So you're going to have your file name, save as type MP3, and then next you want to come here to bitrate mode. You want to make sure yours is set to constant, and these are just different ways that you can export your MP3. But what I'm sharing with you is the basic standard that works in professional podcasting and things like that. You want to come to constant, want to go to quality, and the quality that you want to choose is 192 kilobytes per second or 192 kbps. And again, this is just standard. This is across the board what is acceptable and what is good. And that's what we're ultimately going for. We want to be able to produce a good quality podcast. So you go to constant, 192. Don't have to worry about this. In channel mode, you can leave it at joint stereo. That's perfectly fine. Once you do that, you just hit save. In this, you can just leave this blank. If anything appears in this description or anything like this, you can just hit clear. And for right now, it's really not that important in trying to create your first podcast. So once this pops up, you can just hit OK. And your podcast will start exporting. And the exporting process can depend on how long your podcast is, how powerful your computer is, and stuff like that. If it's taking a long time, just go and get a snack or do something else. But once it's done, that's it. You have produced, edited, recorded your first podcast. Congrats. Congratulations. One thing I want to make sure to remind you all, when you're editing or doing anything, you want to make sure that you're saving your project just in case, say you have to go somewhere, you don't have time to, continue to work on your podcast. What you want to do is you want to go to File, Save Project. And so this warning will explain to you that when you're saving your project, it isn't an exported file. Like we just produced an MP3. And that MP3 is something that you can listen to, play it, submit it, share it, and all that stuff. An Audacity project is not that. It is just a project where you're editing and preparing your audio to be exported. But you want to save your project just in case you want to come back and make changes or anything like that. We go Save, we go File, Save Project. Since this is the first time we're saving it, I'm going to Save Project, hit OK. So I'm going to save my project here in the Crash Course folder. And I'll just name the file. This is Dude Make Something, episode 17. And I like to name my file Edit because this is the file that I'm using to edit. And just hit save. And so now it's just saving all the edits and audio and all that stuff, just in case, say I can't finish this right now. Maybe editing is taking a lot longer than expected, or I have other stuff to do. Once you have your project saved, you can always come back to it and keep editing and keep doing what you need to do. So always, always, always make sure that your project is saved, because anything could happen. Your computer can turn off or anything like that, and you don't want to lose all the work that you had been working on. So make sure to go File, Save, and then once you have it, once you've initially saved it, you can always just hit Control S. So always, always be sure to save your work, because it is the biggest headache, the biggest headache when your stuff isn't saved. Once everything is all done and you've exported your file, we can now move on to the next step, which is uploading your podcast to Anchor and then sharing it with the world. See you in the next lesson.